So this is going to be our question analysis and course overview. Let's get straight into things. So, as you know, the question itself is that accurate news reporting is a public good. Does it follow that news agencies should be funded from taxation? So it's a two-part question, and I'm going to get into a bit more detail on how we plan to tackle those two parts on the next slide. But first of all, let's have a quick look and a very brief discussion of some of the key themes that we should be thinking about when attempting a question such as this. So, what we're really looking for, now I'm just going to turn on my annotations so we can both sort of work together on this. So, of course, this is just our session here, what we're doing at the moment, but we've got four key relevant theories, okay, before we then have a go at structuring our own essay, which is a fairly straightforward exercise that should mainly be led by you. So what we have is we're going to start off with the fundamentals of a public good. We're then going to move on to checking the conditions, the conditionality of accurate news as to whether or not it satisfies the fundamental structuring and laws of a public good. And then we move on to, yeah, the fundamental principles of taxation and the relevant sort of applications to news. That's sort of like another key kind of bit. And then finally, we'll be looking at, yeah, sort of state media and how it behaves in election cycles, which is a very sort of, shall we say, hot topic, perhaps, specifically because, as you know, not all news is equal, shall we say. And that's something that we will find out as we go through the course material together. So it's very fascinating and very interesting material. Anyway, let's briefly sort of dive in slightly further to sort of a couple of these things. So I'm actually going to hop over first of all to the bottom slide, which is a close analysis of public goods. I think the course, this course is going to, this course will give you a moderately strong sort of introduction to the rules and characteristics of public goods. Before tackling the JL question, the John Locke question two. This is, they're highly fundamentally important kind of pieces of the puzzle in economics. Most of you may have already studied it at A level, but this will therefore essentially serve as a recap, plus a few additional kind of critical points that sort of I would perhaps want to make about it. I think the real key point to the whole public good sort of discourse is the fact that the public good is not provided by the private sector due to its characteristics. It's not like some weird thing where like the state has just happily volunteered to fund it. The truth is the public good genuinely only exists as a result of the fact that there is a private side market failure. In other words, the private sector completely refuses. The private sector completely refuses to participate in the funding of this. They don't see it as their duty. So I think that's the other key thing to just make a note of here before we get into the true detail in our next session is, truth is, we are studying a question that is comparing, media and accurate news to a type of good that only comes into existence at the result as we could perhaps say, as the result of a private side market failure. In other words, no market for the good exists. But is this true, But does this hold true, you know? Does this hold true in the real world of news? I think you'll find that there are plenty of private news companies, aren't there? And that's where it gets interesting, right? There's plenty and plenty of private news companies, and they are all competing against each other. So, yeah, the problem, it is definitely a slightly more complex, a slightly more complex problem than simply kind of pinpointing, declaring that all news is a public good, right? You know, we can't simply just do that. We have to think a little bit more clinically here. Have to think a little bit more clinically.